Welcome. Thank you for jumping on here with me. We are going over the ladies design your Jeep build, the three most frequently asked questions together. The Design Your Jeep build is part of the LadyJeepers.com confident trail system, and it is part of what we are going to be covering and going over today together. If you are not familiar, I am Kristen DeLibra from LadyJeepers.com. I am going to be your trail guide today as we navigate our way down the trail to designing your Jeep build. So there will be a replay available after this workshop, and it will be emailed directly to you. So I do ask, please do not record or reproduce this workshop in any way. What are we going to cover in this workshop today? I'm going to go over the three most frequently asked questions that I get that pertain to a Jeep build and your Jeep build. So the most frequently asked question number one is, what size tire can I put on my Jeep? Question number two is, what lift height should I get for my Jeep? And question number three, do I have to re-gear my Jeep? So I'm going to answer each one of those questions for you today, right here. For some of you, the information we are going over together will be second nature, and it may be reviews in particular aspects for you, which I think is awesome. But for others, this workshop is going to be a complete new step out of what is familiar, which is so exciting. Ladies, I love talking to you ladies who are jumping in and just getting started. I absolutely love that you are here with me. So no matter which of those sound like you, I want you to remember these keys as we're going through this class together. Be kind to yourself, especially if you are hearing things that are new, that you are just starting to learn, you're excited about. Be kind if something feels confusing or overwhelming. Sometimes you need to hear something a couple times before you really get it. And be kind to everyone and be supportive. So for everyone who is on here together, be kind as everyone is in different places. And we're here to help build each other up as we are building knowledge together. Where we are going to start. First question that I have for you that is going to answer all three of these questions is, what is your end goal? You have to start with your end goal in mind before you can put a plan together. This can change the longer you have your Jeep and the more you do with your Jeep. However, you need to have an idea before you get started modifying your Jeep. So we need to dive in and ask ourselves some questions. So the questions to ask is, one, is this my daily driver? How much on-road versus off-road do you see yourself driving? Are you leaning more one way or the other? You're going to be on-road more, you're going to be off-road more. You want to be building towards that on-road drivability or your off-road performance and drivability. So where do you want the most performance? Do you want the most performance and handling and functionality on the road, or do you want that performance to be utilized off-road? Don't worry, you can have both. We are going to design your build so that you can have a balance between your on-road and your off-road drivability so you don't lose one or the other. So what we're going to do is we are going to start from the bottom up, literally the bottom up, as we are working through these questions together today. There are different factors that play into the lift height, and you want to understand completely what you will need to modify for each tire size before you jump in. So you need to understand when you're deciding from the bottom up what size tire you're going to go with. I want you to really understand what changes you're going to have to make based on what size tire you're going to go with. Because my goal is I want to eliminate any surprises. I never want to hear you say, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. I didn't know I was going to have to make that change or modification or upgrade so that nothing is a surprise. That is our goal for today, eliminating surprises. So we're going to start with question 1. What size tires can I put on my Jeep? This is the most frequently asked question that I get. So we're going to jump in and get started with question 1 right now. The basic rule: the larger the tire, the more changes and upgrades or modifications you will need to make. So keep that in mind when you are trying to decide between tire sizes. The bigger that tire gets, you need to already assume and budget and understand that the more changes and upgrades that you make is going to be based on the tire size. Bigger the tire, more modifications that are going to have to be made to keep your Jeep happy and to keep that performance and drivability. Think of your build as a balance. You need the geometry and mechanical balance to have a long-term longevity of your build. And that is something I push. I want you to have longevity. I don't want you to put parts and pieces and have your build, and then all of a sudden things are wearing out. They're breaking. They're not holding up. You're having to go back in and replace parts more than one time, or replace a part, take it off, and put something different on. I want you to think about what we're going to be going over is really creating balance. So there has to be this geometrical balance when we're talking about angles, when we're talking about measurements, when we're talking about making these changes. So everything has to be done together so that basically where you are starting, as you change things, you're trying to get back to that same geometry as close as possible, unless you're going with a crazy build. But even then, you still have to have the correct geometry and angles so that everything is happy and all those parts and pieces are going to last as long as possible. So start with a basic tire size platform overview. This really is about understanding the changes and different requirements that are going to be based on your tire size choice. As you can see, I am a charts person. I'm a worksheets person. I'm a graph person. I like everything laid out so it is as easy to understand and follow, and it's not confusing. So it's right there. So this is laid out pretty well for you ladies. So when you look at this tire size platform overview, you can see across the top, there's a list of a lot of different parts and pieces that you would need to modify from their stock form based on what tire size you go with. So we're just going to start and run through these quickly together. If you are looking at going up to a 33-inch tire, you will need to get new tires. Your wheel is going to be optional. That is completely up to you, but you definitely will have to buy new tires if you're getting 33s. Don't have to worry about your axle. Don't need to worry about trussing your axle. The minimum gear requirement that you want to have in your differential, so your gear ratio, is a 373 for 33-inch tires. We're going to go into this a little bit more in just a minute. The newer JLUs and Gladiators have a different transmission in them. So it is not as detrimental and crucial, depending on the tire size, that you re-gear right away. But I will tell you, you do need to plan on, if you're going to be upgrading tire sizes, to keep that performance, that drivability, so that you still love your Jeep on the road, and so that you're not putting extra stress on parts and pieces. You do need to have on your plan to re-gear your Jeep. Now, lift and suspension upgrades. Again, depending on what make and model Jeep you have, this is going to be a different answer. So we're going to go in depth into that in just a minute. Knuckles and ball joints, your stock knuckles and ball joints, you can keep those stock for your 33s. Same thing with your track bar and control arms. You do not need to upgrade your steering. You don't have to worry about bigger brakes, drive shafts, your sway bars, anything like that. Now we're going to talk about when we jump up to 35. So if you're going to go to a 35-inch tire platform, You are going to need new tires, and you are going to need to look at new wheels that have the correct offset to be able to run those new tires, because they're going to be a little bit wider as well as taller. So you're going to have to make sure that you reposition where the tire is inside that wheel well. So the correct offset wheel is going to change that mounting surface. So you can adjust a tire so it sticks outside the wheel well a little bit. So you have more room between the inside of the tire and the inside of the wheel well or the body. You can have them completely balanced. And with offsets, you can change it and tuck the tires inside the wheel well more so you don't have as much tire outside. So that is what the offset does. With the correct offset, it's going to move the tire out on that wheel well just enough so that you have that clearance and that room for your tire, especially when you go to turn, so that you're not making contact with any of those mechanical components that are right there with your Jeep. So your axle for 35s, you should not have to change your axle. Trussing your axle, we do recommend that you truss your axle with 35s. And this is for long term, again, for the longevity, so that you don't end up with issues down the road. Minimum gear requirements for 35s is going to be a 410 gear. Link and suspension upgrade, you are going to need to get a lift. Again, with some of the newer Jeeps, you not necessarily, but you do need to plan on getting a suspension upgrade with lift and different shocks so that you are upgrading that with the 35s. Knuckles and ball joints, we do recommend that when those wear out, you upgrade those and replace those with aftermarket knuckles and ball joints. So they're going to hold up and with that wear and tear of that bigger, heavier tire that is rotating as well. Same thing when we're talking about your track bar and control arms. When you do go to need to replace those, upgrade to an aftermarket part. You should not have to upgrade your steering or bigger brakes or your drive shafts. Now, that is going to depend on the lift height that you go with, will depend when you need to upgrade your drive shafts. So again, you can keep the correct geometry and angles so that you do not end up with drive shaft issues down the road. 37s, this is where the game changes. I look at, you kind of have your boxes and you can see it really well on here, the way that it's laid out on this chart. 37s and bigger, you need to plan on making a lot of changes and upgrades as we are talking about going to those larger tire size. So with 37s, you're going to have to get new tires and wheels, because again, you need the correct offset so that you can have that placement correct for those 37s. As far as axles go, for longevity, so that it's going to hold up forever, for a long time, you're going to enjoy your Jeep. You're not going to have issues and weaknesses. The recommendation is a Dana 44 or a Dana 60 axle to run 37s. Can you put them on a Dana 35? Yes, you can. But when we start talking about the Dana 30, the Dana 35, when we start talking about those axles, really, we want to not overload those axles. The recommendation, again, we're talking geometry, strength, longevity of your build. If you're going to go to 37s, you want to do so on a Dana 44 or a Dana 60 so that that axle is going to be a little bit stronger and it's going to hold up to all that additional weight and stress and rotating mass that is being put on that axle. Yes, you will want to truss your axle as well. This is going to add added strength, longevity, so that you don't end up with a twist in your axle if you have issues running those 37s, because I'm sure you're going to take it off-road as well as drive it on-road. The minimum gear requirement for the 37s is a 456, and you are definitely going to need a lift and suspension upgrades if you're going to a 37. Plan on knuckles and ball joints, plan on track bar and control arm, plan on upgrading your steering, upgrading to bigger brakes, upgrading your drive shafts, so that you're thinking about all of that. Then you are going to have to think about your sway bar linkage as well. When we start talking about 40s, that's a whole nother game as well. So for again, you're going to put 40s on, you want your Jeep to last, you want to be able to drive it, enjoy it. Yes, you're going to need new wheels and tires. Correct offset is going to be crucial. A Dana 60, an upgraded Dana 60 is the recommendation for 40s and bigger. That way you have an upgraded Dana 60. So it's a 1-ton axle that is going to be able to hold up to the 40s and bigger. You will definitely want to trust your axle. You want a minimum of a 488 with 40s. As the tires get bigger, depending on what direction you're going, will determine what gear set you want to go with based on the performance you're trying to get. Definitely going to need lift and suspension upgrades. Definitely going to need to redo a lot of those components and those parts and the mechanics. So knuckles and ball joints, your track bar and control arms. You will need to upgrade steering for sure. Upgrade to bigger brakes, which you will get with that Dana 60 and that 1-ton axle. That will be your brake upgrade. Definitely going to need drive shafts as well. So hopefully that helps so that you can see it looking at a chart. So it lays everything out. You can see 33s. I might have to make a couple changes. 35s, I might have to make a couple more. 37s, I'm going to have to make a lot of changes. A 40 and bigger, I'm going to have to change everything, basically. Because I want you to be prepared. So this is a little more zoomed in so that you can see this. And you can kind of see across the board, 33s, 35s, 37s, 40s, and bigger. And these are just the upgrades that you need to make for the platform of your Jeep. This is not anything about additional upgrades that you can be making as well. This is just for the stock parts, pieces, and components. It is not as simple as deciding on a tire size and just putting it on your Jeep. I know I get that question a lot. What size tire can I put on my Jeep? I always recommend take the time to lay out your entire build of what your ultimate platform is going to be for your Jeep, so that if you do make any changes, you're only going to do them once. You're not going to have to go back in and redo a part, a piece, or part of your build and have to redo anything. You're only going to do it once because you know exactly where you're trying to get to. So in a nutshell, when you are talking about what size tire can I put on my Jeep, you need to have room for the new tire size, but also understand what goes with that choice. So you have to make enough room inside that wheel well that that tire can fit. Sometimes people will cut their fenders. Sometimes people will cut their corners. There's ways to make physical room for that tire. So you're not only having to make physical room for your tire to fit in there, you also need to understand what else goes with that choice that you are making. Again, no surprises. Question 2, what lift height should I get? Believe it or not, there are a lot of factors that play into that question as well. Depending on what type of fenders you are going to get is going to depend on how much lift height you're going to need. Because again, ultimately, as you are designing your Jeep, figuring out your build, you will decide on your lift height based on the platform that you want. If you want to make room for the tire and have room for the travel of your suspension, that is one balance you can go for. If you want to have more room between the tire and that fender and in that wheel well so that you have more room to utilize that suspension, you would go with a higher lift. But keep in mind, there is a max to how much your suspension can move, how much up travel you have, how much down travel you have. So sometimes you'll end up with more lift than your shocks and springs can actually utilize. So when you are talking about what size lift do you need, we're going to be talking about it so that you can fit the tire size on your Jeep that you want, and you're going to have travel. So an up travel and down travel for suspension movement, like when you are off-road. So the fenders that you choose are going to play a part in the actual height that you will need on the lift. So as you can see in this picture, this is a high clearance fender, which means it's not sitting down as low. It doesn't come out and drop as low as a stock fender. So by removing a stock fender and going with a high clearance fender, it's going to give you more room. So you have room for the tire so that you don't have to have as much lift height to get that same amount of clearance and room in there. So if you're going to keep your stock fenders, it's going to require you go with a higher lift. If you're going to go to a high clearance fender, that means you don't need as much lift height to get that same clearance within that wheel well. So that is why I wanted to talk about fenders to start with. For example, this is a full fender delete from Ace Engineering. You can see that with this full fender delete, there is full utilization of this suspension. There is no fender that you have to have clearance with. Keep in mind, for our drivability on road, depending on where you live in the country, you do have to have fenders by law for on road. So these are things you'll have to look at and know as well as you are designing and putting your build together. So again, it is all about creating that room. This is, again, is a picture of a high clearance fender. This happens to be on my Jeep. I love it. So with the high clearance fender, that is going to allow for that room without having to have as much height in the lift itself. So as you can see, these are all different lifts. You need to pick what is going to be right for you. But these are also different vehicles. So there's going to be different lifts based on the vehicle that you have. So in a nutshell, things that are going to determine your lift. What type of fenders are you going to run? What size tire are you going to have? And what type of Jeep do you have? So what year, make, and model? All three of those have to be taken into account to come to the answer to your question of what size lift do I need? So we just went through fenders. So what I wanted to share with you is this is a quick overall guide. When we're talking about the CJ, the stock height, you could get a 28-29 inch tire. You could do a 30-inch tire with an upgraded fender. So trimming or aftermarket fender, you could get a 31 in there. With a 2-inch lift, you could run a 32. And with a 4-inch lift, you could run a 34. With the YJ at stock height, you could do a 28 or a 29. With fender trimming or an aftermarket high clearance fender, you could run a 30. With a 2-inch lift, you could run a 30 or a 31 if you did the fender upgrades. A 4-inch lift, if you still had stock fenders, you could run a 32. If you did a 4-inch lift with the high clearance fenders, you could run a 34-inch tire. With a 6-inch lift, you could run a 34-inch tire. Or if you did the 6-inch lift and fender upgrades, you could run a 35. We're not talking about coilovers. We're not talking about, stretching. We're not talking about back half kits. We're not talking about changing the suspension mounts. This is when we're talking about just a regular lift kit for one of these Jeeps. So the CJ and the YJ have leaf spring suspensions versus the coil springs that started in the TJ and newer. So when you are looking at modifying a CJ or a YJ, it is going to be a little bit different when we are talking about the suspension and lifts and upgrades. So the TJ LJ stock height, you could run a 28, 29, maybe a 30. With fender trimming or an aftermarket high clearance, you could run a 31. With a 2-inch lift, you could run a 31. But if you did a 2-inch lift with fender upgrade, so a high clearance fender, you could run a 32. With a 4-inch lift, you could run a 32. Upgrade those fenders, you could get a 34. With a 6-inch lift, you could run a 34. Or with the fender upgrades with the 6-inch lift, you could run a 35. JKU stock height, you could run a 30-inch tire. With fender trimming or an aftermarket fender, you could run a 33. Or if you did the leveling kit, you could run a 33. A 2-inch to a 2.5-inch lift, you can run 33s or 35s, might require fender upgrades depending on which lift you go with. A 3-inch to a 3.5-inch lift is for 35s or 37s with upgraded fenders and, of course, correct wheel offsets. 4 to 4.5-inch lift, 37s or 39s with fender upgrades and wheel upgrades and correct offset. A 6-inch lift, you can run 39 or a 40 with fender upgrades and wheel upgrades. This is not talking about setting up for max suspension utilization and travel. This again is our kind of overall guide when we are talking about getting a lift kit for this model and generation of Jeep. This is a quick guide because the JLJLUs are a little different based on the model that you have, based on the gear that you have. So we're just going to kind of do a quick overview. For the JL stock height, you could run a 33. With a 1 to 2-inch lift, you can run 35s. With a 2.5 to 3.75 lift, you could run 37s. Of course, there have been more lifts that are becoming available for the JLs and the JTs. There'll be more that continue to become available as well. So this is kind of your overall in a nutshell, depending on which exact make and model that you have, it will determine if there's a little bit of leeway in play there. Question 3, do I have to re-gear my Jeep? I get this all the time. Where I want to start with is, what does re-gearing do in a nutshell? I'm not going to get super technical, mechanical with you. I just want to do a quick overview, like in a nutshell, what it means, what it does. So that way you have an idea. The biggest thing that re-gearing is going to do is it is going to take the stress off of the transmission and the engine. It's also going to change at what RPM you have to be at to move the Jeep. Accelerate or gear and RPM you are going like up a hill. So what's going to happen is your RPMs are going to change. It's going to take the power off the transmission, or the stress off the transmission and the engine. So without re-gearing, you're going to be slower off the line. You're going to feel like it bogs down when you're going uphill. It wants to downshift, and you might feel like it downshifts and upshifts and downshifts and upshifts, or the RPMs get really high and it's not shifting when you feel like it needs to shift to downshift. And it's going to put more stress on the transmission itself. So what do the gear ratio numbers mean, right? We just talked about the numbers. I'm sure you see them everywhere. So this is your ring and pinion gear. And the deeper the gear ratio, the more low end you are getting. So that means the more go off the line, the more crawl and four-wheel low, like that deep kind of crawl that you get, the bigger the number, the deeper that gear ratio is, that low end is going to be more. But you are going to lose some of your high end. So you're going to lose some of that max speed with the deeper those gear ratios go. So for example, 373, 410 is going to be deeper. So that is a deeper gear ratio. 456 is deeper. 513 is deeper. What I want you to also realize is as the gear ratio numbers get bigger, so as you can see the numbers getting bigger, the size of the gear set itself is getting smaller. This is part of why we talk about axles and what gears you want to run in that axle. We're not going to go in depth into that today. That's its whole own class when we start getting into that. But if you just think about it, the bigger the number gets, the smaller the ring and pinion set is getting, which means that could then become your weakest point, and you don't want to break a ring and pinion. So the tire size and re-gearing, we're going to go through this really quickly. 33s, minimum is a 373. 35s, your minimum is a 410. 37s, your minimum is a 456. 40s, your minimum is a 513. Do keep in mind, though, as we're talking about the new transmissions that have come out from the JL, JLU, JT, it has changed the stress that is put on the transmission, and how crucially it is important it is to re-gear right away. But long-term longevity, drivability, if you are starting to look at new tires, getting bigger tires, please put that on your list that you are going to have to plan to re-gear. All right, there is so much more I want to share with you. Parts, upgrades, understanding all these things, how everything works together, the geometry, what really happens when you start making these modifications and changes to your Jeep. But there's just not time. But if you take what I shared with you today, it will save you money, time, and frustration in the long run. But maybe you want more. Maybe you want all those things. You want to dive in. You want to see what the inside of the differential is. You want to see the difference in the axles that we're talking about. You want to see the upgrades that you can make, what that means when you modify these parts and these pieces and what they do and why you modify them. So dive in and let's create a plan with a solid understanding. Design Your Jeep build classes are starting January 20th. I'm so excited about that. This is a full in-depth program. What I shared today was just 3 questions that I get that I wanted to make sure everyone was clear on as they're starting to decide what to buy, what to spend money on, how they're going to do their build. This program literally goes step by step, goes in deep, talks about different suspension and shocks and lift heights and the fenders and the bumpers and the skids, and then how all of that plays a part. We talk about the different axles. You get to see the different gear set, understand what changes when you do re-gear. We're going to go in depth into everything. We talk about lockers, every part and piece and upgrade that you could make, and into detail as to what it means, why you would do it, and when you would want to do it. So we are going to be jumping in, diving into these classes together for the Design Your Jeep Build classes starting January 20th. This is step by step with instruction and breakdowns together. So you are getting help every step along the way. You can ask questions. My goal is that you will have clarity, understanding, and you can put together the best build for you and your Jeep. But don't worry, you can ask questions and someone will be there to help you every step of the way. So you have 2 choices. First option, you can take the long road, do nothing, not take this leap of faith, and go out there and brave it alone, learning the hard way, which is what I don't want to see you ladies doing. Trusting a friend's advice, a shop's advice, what you read on the internet and forums, product reviews, trying to figure out how to put your Jeep together, hoping you get your build right the first time and hoping you love the result in the end. But you have a second choice. You can join thousands of other ladies blazing the trail together with a compass to follow and support every mile along the way. So you can follow a system, make your own choices, create your own build that you love, and do it once, saving money, time, and frustration. So if you want to jump in, get all of this, it is just $27 a month, or you get 1 month free when you pay in full. You can sign up by jumping over to ladyjeepers.com/special or clicking the button below. But I want to give you more. I want to make sure you have everything that you need for this Jeep journey, for this experience, for this trail that you have started. So because you are here with me right now, I want to give you even more. That's right, even more education and training to help you take your driving skills to the next level. Be a confident star out on the trails. And of course, take the confusion and overwhelm away, plus save you money on building your Jeep. broken down piece by piece with worksheets, charts, and everything is so easy to follow and understand. So today, not only are you going to be jumping in for this live class series where we work through, go in depth, every part of designing your Jeep build, where you will have your build sheet at the end of these classes and your entire build built out on one sheet right there for you, ready to go. You are also going to get the Confident Trail educational membership. That is going to give you access to not only the Design Your Jeep Build course and all the classes we are going to be going through, you are also going to get access to the Ladies Jeeping in a Weekend Getting Started 101 course. You are going to get access to our Ladies Jeeping in a Weekend 201 course. And one of my favorites, the LadyJeepers Spot You course. This is all about taking your driving skills to the next level. The Spot You program, again, one of my favorite ones, really hones your driving skills with precision and accuracy. This helps you not only off-road, but on the road as well. This program has exercises that are mapped out for you with specific reasoning, a path that you are going to follow, exercises as to what you are going to do for each different exercise to help increase your knowledge of your Jeep and your skills. And it's so much fun. You can do it at home. You don't even have to go anywhere. You can set this up and you are going to be so impressed and have so much fun as you are working on your driving skills. And those carry right over to the trail. So here's everything that you're getting today. You are getting the LadyJeepers.com Design Your Jeep Build, the classes that are starting January 20th. Those are live together. We are going to work through things. You get to ask questions. I want to make sure you get everything that you need to know as we work through this together. So not only are you going to get the classes as we're going through all of this training and breakdown, you will have access to the entire Design Your Jeep Build course, the Ladies Jeeping in a Weekend 101 course, the Ladies Jeeping in a Weekend 201 course, the Lady Jeepers Spot You course. All of these are part of our Confident Trail system here at LadyJeepers.com, specifically designed for you, ladies. You also get full access to our membership area. We have quick tips. We have our noob nugs. There's so much waiting for you inside. Mechanical and tech, so much in there. You get access to all of that as well. And you will get in the mail today your welcome membership package as well. It has great educational tips and training in it for you. We have our instructional cards that come that you can keep in your glove box. You can keep in your center console of your Jeep that go step by step with pictures and instructions for how to air down your tires, winch and recovery, and the things you need to know while you are out there on the trail. And it's right there. You can keep it in your purse. And you also get all of our membership welcome gifts from LadyJeepers.com. So you are getting all of that today, including this entire class series. So excited about that. I can't wait to see you on there with me for just $27 a month, or you get 1 month free when you pay in full for the year for your Confident Trail system. You can jump over to LadyJeepers.com/special or click the link below and jump in and get started with me. I am waiting for you to start this trail of education together. Thank you so much for jumping on here with me, spending a little bit of time, and I hope to see you out on the trail with me when we kick off these classes January 20th. Thank you again. Have a fantastic day.